So last time I cleaned my bookshelf and did a small unhaul of books, and that got me thinking. I have a couple of books that I have high hopes for and I want to read them, but for some reason I'm hesitant to pick them up. These books, quite frankly, intimidate me. Let me show you which ones and what's so intimidating about them, and I would love to hear if you agree. Number one spot has to go to Fable from R.F. Kuang. I read Yellow Phrase from her and was really impressed by it, yet Fable and the Poppy War have been sitting on my shelf for long months now. Specifically Fable because the Poppy War I lent to my sister, so I don't have it currently. As a slow reader who doesn't have much free time nowadays, it's difficult to commit to reading such a chunky book. Plus, I'm afraid that if I read it over a longer period of time, I might forget some details from the beginning. But what intimidates me the most is the nuances the plot and the world building is set to have, and the fact that I might not be able to grasp all of them. People praise how linguistics is incorporated into the fantasy magic system, how translation is highlighted as a tool of colonialism. It's a critique on the elitism of academia in a way that dark academia set out to be at the beginning, and I'm scared to be let down in case my little mind cannot comprehend the sheer brilliance of this book. And instead of giving it a try and seeing how I like it, I just keep putting off starting it. And I read books which require less brain power to understand, but might not be as intellectually rewarding, not that there is anything wrong with that. But from time to time, it would be nice to have a bit of variety and read something that has the power to challenge your worldview a bit, you know. I still haven't gotten over this particular hurdle in my TBR, but I hope one day I will just go and pick Fable up with sheer determination. Next on the list I have The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue by V.E. Schwab, which I had borrowed from my sister at the same time when I lent her The Poppy War months ago, and yet I felt no urgency to pick it up. The reasoning is a bit different here. V.E. Schwab is such a beloved author, and so far I've only read Wishes from her, which I liked, but it didn't blow my mind away. So I'm not sure where I stand with her yet. The Invisible Life of Addie LaRue is centered around a woman who makes a bargain for immortality, and the price she pays is that everybody who meets her forgets her, until she meets a young man who mysteriously remembers her name centuries later. Oh, this sounds like such an intriguing premise. Historical fiction mixed with a bit of fantasy and hopefully delving into the meaning of life and love and what it means to be forgotten. From what I've heard on various book social media platforms, people either love this book and praise it as beautifully written and touching and memorable, or they think it was a letdown and had no substance. Those are two extremes, and I'm thinking, what if I read it and just find it okay? This book has the potential to be a 5-star read for me, or to be a disappointing read, or just be simply alright. And I'm not ready to face it yet. I'm really curious, but the combination of super positive and negative reviews made me hesitant to start the story. I think if there was an obligatory reading list for BookTube, this would be in the top 30 or maybe top 20, and that's actually putting me off of it. If there really was an obligatory reading list, let me know which books you would put on there. I mean, at this point, I just need to read it and see for myself what I would think before my sister asks for it back. The third book I want to talk about is a very recent purchase titled The Will of the Many. I've heard several booktubers talk about it as a high fantasy set in an elite academy with a bit of mystery and spying plotline, and that was apparently enough to convince me to get this book. However, the truth is, I don't really read epic fantasies all that much anymore. I feel like I prefer a bit smaller scale worlds, high stakes but usually only to the main character and the people around them, and not really world-ending conflicts that the hero needs to solve. And this is a 700 plus pages high stakes adventure, which I'm intimidated by because I'm not used to it anymore. On average, I read 10 to 30 pages on weekdays and maybe 100 or so pages over the weekend. So this would take me a while, And especially if I'm not amazed by the plot and the intricacies of the fantasy world, it would easily feel like a task to read it. I feel like my reading habits changed. I'm actually more picky with the books I read because I don't have endless time to read anymore, and I also prefer books that are a bit easier, a bit quicker to get through, you know, for those quick dopamine hits that you get throughout fast-paced stories. Fantasies with slower moving, wide-scale, intricate plotline do not make me excited anymore, and I find that sad as well, honestly. On the other hand, it's also entirely possible that I'm going to breeze through the book and get back into reading more epic fantasy. Who knows? Certainly not me, as I still haven't picked it up yet. My problem of picking up The Atlas Paradox can be explained very easily. You might remember The Atlas 6 was one of the first books, if I'm not mistaken, that went viral on TikTok and restarted the whole dark academia trend. First it was self-published and then it got officially published as well. It was a bit controversial because some people adored it, other people thought it was all smoke no fire, as it usually is with hype books. I personally enjoyed The Atlas 6. Was it a flawless book? No. Did I have a good time reading it? Absolutely. So then why has The Atlas Paradox been sitting on my shelf for more than a year now? Well, there was another TikTok hype book that I read, enjoyed, and picked up the sequel that I ended up DNFing, and it sent me into a reading slump. And that was Fourth Wing and Iron Flame. And right now I'm intimidated to pick The Atlas Paradox up because I'm not ready for another disappointing sequel where I'm bored of everything that was good in the first book and where I cannot ignore the plot holes anymore. Please tell me that The Atlas Paradox is a better sequel, because I'm genuinely curious to finish the trilogy. There is the Atlas Complex, which is the third book, which apparently also received mixed reviews, so maybe I should just keep my reading experience of The Atlas 6 fondly in my memories and not try to continue the trilogy. And the last book on the list, which has a completely different reason as to why I haven't picked it up yet, is We Free the Stars, the second part of a duology. I read We Hunt the Flame in 2022, and even though I enjoyed it a lot, I cannot recall all the plot and character details anymore. And I'm scared, as the second book heavily builds up on those, I won't enjoy it as much because I will be busy trying to understand the references or recall the character motivations from the first part. And I don't really do rereads before jumping into the sequels, which is a bit dumb, I know. To finish A Curse for True Love last year, I reread Once Upon a Broken Heart and The Ballad of Never After to prepare. And honestly, those are some of my all-time favorites, but I was a bit bored of them the second time around because not enough time has passed to completely forget the details, but enough that the impact wasn't impacting anymore, you know? It's like, I really want this book to amaze me, but I should have picked it up earlier, closer to when I read the first book, and now I have been putting it off for such a long time that newer books always overshadow it. I also make the mistake of keeping it on the top shelf. Actually, I keep most of these books on the upper shelves, which I don't really reach for that often. Maybe I should trick my mind and put them on my TBR shelf so that they seem more accessible. I might actually do that. Let me know what are your tricks or tips to pick up books that might seem intimidating, either because of page length, epic plotline, or intricate character motivations. I'd love to learn from you. I hope you enjoyed me trying to rationalize my chaotic reading habits. See you in my next video. Until then, take care. Bye!